Weekly wrap up or overview or for the Bridge Gospel reading plan that we've been going through since July 18th. We started this, and we started with Matthew and Mark, and then we just this last week we finished up with Luke, and we started John, the last gospel in our series here. And this last week it's sometimes you got to kind of keep in mind what's going on, because here last week we ended with the crucifixion of Jesus, or first the betrayal, the arrest, the mocking, and the illegal trials, and then the crucifixion of Jesus and the death of Jesus, the resurrection of Jesus, all like this in the last three chapters there of Luke. And then then all of a sudden we turn around again. We're in John, at the very beginning, the beginning of Jesus' life, coming to earth and his beginning of his ministry there. And it's just like look at my John, like John 1. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's like all marked up. I got it marked up, colored up. I'm one who's I like to write in my Bible and highlight different words, and kind of helps me stay focused and kind of pull out the real meaning of what the writers are trying to get across. But I just want to finish today with the last two verses, excuse me, of John chapter 2, where we finished yesterday reading in the week. And it's John chapter 2, verse just 23 and 24. Jesus has just left the temple. He's entered Jerusalem, and he's left the temple. I said, if you are a church person, you kind of know the story where he overturns, actually it happened before too, it's going to happen again. He overturns the money changers' table because they turned the temple into like a marketplace. They've turned it into, let's say, like a flea market. And there's also the people there are just into ripping off other people when they talk about the money changers, because they would give it just a crazy rate of exchange for, you had to use the temple money, you had to use what they would authorize. And so it was just like, it was a scam. It was it's not like we get it over still in the emails and stuff. They were just ripping people off. Jesus knew it. It wasn't even a house of prayer. It was just, like I said, just a flea market. And so Jesus overturns the tables. But then at the end of that, after they ask him, it's like, who gives you authority? But it says in verse 23 and 24 of John chapter 2, it says, now while he was in Jerusalem at the Passover festival, many people saw the signs he was performing and believed in his name. Now, if that was just the end of the chapter, like period, dot, no more, that sounds great. It says many saw the signs and believed. Many saw the signs and believed in Jesus. You think that is great. Jesus, now you've just started selecting your disciples. You have this large gathering there. It says many people, so we don't know how many. It could have been 100, it could have been 200, but it just sounded like there was this momentum building there. Several hundred people. They saw the signs. They saw the signs, and they believed. But what does Jesus do? I'm thinking, Jesus, you're on the bandwagon. You're going. This is going great. Everything according to plan, right? Verse 24. But Jesus, listen to this. But Jesus, you think about all that momentum going. You think about, and I almost sense like this, I don't want to say party atmosphere, but this enthusiasm. You think that's going, and people are right there. We're right here with you, Jesus. We're right here. And it says, but Jesus would not entrust himself to them, for he knew all people. He knew all people. And I forgot verse 25. And then it says he did not need the testimony about mankind, for he knew what was in each person. the last three verses there. And see, he would not entrust himself to them. He would not commit, another word for commit himself to them. Because he says he knew what was in the heart of the people. And the commentaries don't say he knew that people were fickle, that people were flighty. And then we can see that too, even at the end of Jesus' life, when he's coming into Jerusalem again on Palm Sunday, what we celebrate as Palm Sunday, a few days before he went to the cross, that Palm Sunday, he comes in town, and remember the people are laying their coats and their palm branches on the ground, and Jesus is riding into Jerusalem on a donkey, and yet that same crowd, many of that same crowd, a few days later were yelling, "Crucify him, crucify him," because it just didn't turn out the way they thought in their minds. So here, that's why Jesus, he says he would not entrust himself to them, because he knew all people. And in verse 25, and he knew what was in each person. He knew the nature of mankind. See, Jesus didn't need the affirmation of people. He was on, here's my takeaway here. He was on task. He stayed on task. He knew what he was there for. He didn't need people to keep building him up. And sometimes, like I do, maybe like you do, we need those certain friends. We need the Facebook recognition. We need the likes, the thumbs up. We need someone responding to our text. And why did they respond? How come it took them so long? And they used all caps here. I saw someone or heard someone one time, and they said someone sent them something in all caps, and they were all offended because this person sent them this message in all caps, and because all caps mean this like this loud or shouting or like. And they found out the person who sent it didn't realize it, didn't know, but they were all offended because it was all caps, and so it's how easily we get offended sometimes. How easily we just take offense. And so Jesus said, I don't entrust myself to them. I'm staying on task. And his task was, we've looked at it recently too, again in Hebrews 12, but the task was Hebrews 12, where the Hebrew writer writes here, it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us what? Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And maybe sometimes that hindrance is our view of other people and are needing their affirmation. But he says, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Listen to this, and I'll finish with this. Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer or the author and perfecter of our faith. The Hebrew writer says, throw off everything. See, and we get that example from Jesus. He threw off everything, stayed on task, kept his eyes on his mission. And then, like the writer of Hebrews says, keep your eyes on Jesus. So today, I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what maybe struggles. Maybe you put your faith and your hope and your trust and your confidence in people and certain situations, and it has just totally not turned out like you thought. They've let you down. They've hurt you. Jesus right here says, stay on task. Hebrew writer says, keep your eyes on Jesus. Jesus won't let us down. People will let you down. The government will let you down. Doesn't matter what happens on the next election day. It doesn't matter what happens there. Our hope is not in the government. Our hope is not in a political system. Our hope is not in a certain denomination. Our hope is not in that next check that comes in the mail. Our hope is in Christ. And that's why we're to keep our eyes on Christ. So hopefully that was a little encouragement to you today. This next week we're going to start in John chapter 3 and go through there. Just a little side note, tomorrow at Centennial when we meet at 9:30, there is right now even a pickleball tournament going on right there. So there's going to be a lot of cars there tomorrow, but we're going to have some spaces blocked off for the bridge when you first initially get there. So just, don't be freaked out when you come in the parking lot and see all those cars. They do this once a year, so all is good. Just a little heads up there. So God bless you guys. Hopefully have a great rest of your Saturday. And enjoy here in Paso. Enjoy the weather. It's nice and cool after all of our hot spells and everything. So I'm kind of enjoying that. Going to do a little bit of work in the yard. But God bless you guys.